The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome. It is February 15, 2024. Welcome to The Signal. My name is Matt Edwards, and we've got another good rundown for you today. Let's check in real quick on the Senate. Yesterday we were checking in on the House. We're going to check in on the Senate. This is Senator Dan Foreman. They are right now debating, it looks like, House Bill 1245, which is deals with adds to existing law to allow certain labels to satisfy requirements regarding any warning. So this is for pesticides. They want to. I guess this bill here is designed to just say, hey, whatever labels the federal government puts on things is good enough for Idaho. We don't need to add any other extra labels. That seems to be the gist of this. But let's listen to Senator Dan Foreman. He's a pledge signer in good standing with Citizens Alliance. So let's hear some of his remarks on this bill.
State law for failure to warn, as long as they're in compliance with the EPA labeling regulations. That bothers me. That bothers me a lot because this bill seems to subordinate state and local interest to federal EPA standards. And also another aspect that troubles me is, do we really want to suspend in any way people's access to tort law? Doing so could deny citizens their primary avenue to seek redress for alleged wrongs. That's extremely important to me, and I think it's extremely important to anyone who's ever found himself in a court of law. That's how we settle things. That's how the average citizen can go up against any adversary and get due process.
We've been watching checking in on Senator Dan Foreman here discussing Senate Bill 1245. And as I predicted, this is about states' rights and allowing people in Idaho to not have to live under EPA rules and federal regulations and subverting all of the authority to the federal agencies and to federal government. Dan Foreman's looking for a little bit more control at the state level when it comes to folks' rights in their ability to challenge companies that use these particular products or that make these particular products that have warning labels in the pesticides area. So anyway, we'll check in on that. We'll see how the vote turns out. We are going to keep an eye on the Senate though, because on the agenda today, if they get to it, is House Bill 406, which is the fentanyl mandatory minimums fentanyl bill, which has gotten a lot of attention. That passed the House a couple of weeks ago. It's now before the Senate, and so we'll keep tabs on that. Yesterday, Senator Phil Hart tried to pull the bill back into committee so that they could restructure or reword the fiscal impact that bill may have on the state of Idaho. It was his opinion that the fiscal note was an error because it said that there would be no fiscal impact to the state, that it wouldn't cost the state money. Some people were debating that it'll be kind of a wash because as the usage of cocaine goes down and the usage of fentanyl goes up, that whatever money we were spending for for cocaine offenses would just be spent on fentanyl offenses. Anyway, that motion failed, so the bill is still before the Senate. So not to get too much into the weeds on that. We're going to dive into some weeds here in a bit when we have our guest on in a little bit. But we'll keep tabs on the Senate. What I wanted to make sure we got to, and we touched on it yesterday, was where's the bill? House Bill 415. This is the bill that will allow people that have enhanced carry permits who work at schools, teachers and staff. It will allow them to carry firearms on campus concealed as a last-ditch effort should something horrible occur on the campus. There are security forces, there are police response, but should there be any reason for a teacher or a staff member to use a firearm or to brandish it in protection of themselves or children or students and fellow employees and staff, this bill would allow them the ability to do that. And this bill is currently sitting in the Senate State Affairs Committee, which worries me a little bit. And I want you to understand why that worries me a little bit. There's a little bit of history here with some of these committees in our legislature. The Senate State Affairs Committee in recent years has been the committee where bills that are passed in the House die in the Senate. They get put over into the Senate State Affairs Committee where they just sort of linger and are never heard from again. And that happens often. And I'm going to show you some examples of that in a minute. But the House version of this is the House Ways and Means Committee. So you've got the House Ways and Means Committee and you've got the Senate State Affairs Committee, which is usually where bills that nobody wants to touch, that seem toxic for whatever reason, the establishment doesn't like, those bills will end up going to those committees and just sort of be forgotten. And we're trying to expose that, because when bills pass on a certain side of the House or the Senate with great fanfare, and then people go, what happened to that bill? I mean, the Idaho House made national, maybe even worldwide news. There was a tweet out that somebody tweeted that said the Idaho House passes the death penalty for pedophiles. And that tweet got like 14 million views. So, but that's not law yet. It was simply just passed in the House. So people think, oh, Idaho passed that law, but it didn't pass it yet. The House voted for it, and now it has to go through the proper channels. So I just want to, as an example, I just want you to see here exactly what happens at the Senate. Our organization sent out a mailer about Senator Chuck Winder, who's the pro tem, the leader of the Senate. And it's his duty to direct where bills go when they come over from the House. And this mailer highlighted 10 bills that were passed in the House that ended up going to the Senate State Affairs Committee and dying and never getting a hearing or never coming out of committee and never going before the floor. Those bills include H547, which prohibited ballot harvesting, H631, which prohibits mask mandates, H708, which prohibited the proof having to show proof of a COVID vaccine by the government when you're dealing with the government. House Bill 719, which allowed religious exemptions from the COVID vaccine. House Bill 761, Secure Idaho Elections Act. This was to help reform and bring some integrity to our elections. All of those bills were passed in 2022, I believe, and in the House, and then they died in the Senate State Affairs Committee. Before that, the year before that, House Bill 122, which would allow staff with enhanced concealed carry permits to be on school campuses. So this is a similar bill that was already passed, that we just talked about, was passed 3 years ago now, and died in the Senate State Affairs Committee. House Bill 414, which allows religious exemptions from medical procedures. I'm going to read them all. House H7 417, allow employees to receive workers' compensation if they're injured by a work mandated vaccine. House Bill 419, which protected medical privacy from employers. House Bill 429, which allowed exemptions for children from masks and those stupid plastic enclosures that they put up in schools. That was in 21. All of those bills passed the House. They ended up in Senate State Affairs, and they died, never to be heard from again. So that's why we're not going to let that happen again without at least you knowing about it. So where's the bill? 415. Let's put that graphic back up. House Bill 415 is currently sitting in a graveyard. I mean, I'm going to call it a graveyard right now because it won't be heard. That is the track record of this committee, which is chaired by Senator Guthrie. A few years ago, it was chaired by Senator Patty Ann Lodge. And they just love to kill bills. And we exposed Patty Ann Lodge for lying when in a tweet thread last year, which was pretty incredible. Anyway, we'll keep tabs on that, but I want you guys to know that. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we have attorney Kate Hartley with us. And we want to dive into this House Bill 517, which is going to be a game changer. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll bring Kate Hartley in.
Surplus, which is not a surplus, it's an overcharging of the taxpayers.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, we are back. We are keeping an eye on the Senate as they debate Senate Bill 1245. Looks like Senator Brian Lenny is speaking right now, and so we'll keep tabs on that. And if there's any good clips, we'll clip them out and have them for you and share them later. But it is my pleasure now to bring in attorney Kate Hartley from the Pacific Justice Institute to talk about a bill that kind of popped up. It kind of snuck into the ether here, but this is an incredible bill. And when I learned more about the history and about what all this means, I couldn't wait to bring Ms. Hartley on here to talk about it. So I don't want to steal the thunder about what this bill is all about. I want you to kind of explain it. And I've got the bill printed out. I've got questions about this, and so I really want to figure this out. So Kate, welcome to the program. What can you tell us about this bill? Set it up for us.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Yeah, this bill essentially would provide a cause of action under the Idaho State Constitution, specifically only related to the free speech and free exercise of religion clauses within the Constitution. So right now in the state of Idaho, specifically with free speech, there is not a state cause of action. So in other words, what that means is if someone in Idaho is aggrieved and a free speech violation has happened to them by a government entity, their only option as far as filing a lawsuit to recover is to file a lawsuit in federal court under the U.S. Constitution and federal statute. So again, there is no state-based way for them to file a claim. There is a statute in Idaho where you can file a claim related to the free exercise of religion. That does exist, but there does not exist anything in the free speech realm. And there's a lot of advantages potentially to having a state claim, having that option. And one is that the state courts in Idaho can have their own interpretations, right? The state of Idaho could say, we really value free speech, and so we don't necessarily have to follow federal precedent, right? In our state courts, we can go by really, what the people of Idaho want, and they can be, and they're in theory more in tune with what the people of Idaho want than the federal courts, federal government is. So there's that opportunity for Idaho to really develop its own case law and its own precedent on free speech. And so that's a huge advantage. And just from a practical standpoint, not every attorney is admitted to federal court. Not every attorney wants to deal with federal court. And so I think people who are aggrieved are going to have more options of people who may take it on for them if the state court is an option.
Yeah. So let me break that down for us. So if you feel like the government at any level, whether it was, your city government, your state government, the feds, whoever violated, your free speech rights, right now in the state of Idaho, the only place that you can go would be to file in a federal court. And then be among 50 states that might be doing the same thing with people all over the place. So the chances of and the length of time that it would take to find recourse in that avenue, you're saying if we do that at the state level, you might have a better chance of being heard. You might have a better chance of having an outcome and having a more local feel to your claim against the state. Is that?
Agree. Definitely there can be a local feel. And again, Idaho can develop its own precedent. So a state court, deciding a case on free speech, in Idaho state court does not have to follow federal precedent. Whereas when you're in a federal court, that's not the case. You have to follow federal precedent. So if Idaho courts want to say, again, we really value free speech and we are going to go even farther than, what federal precedent says on this issue, they can do that. And again, like I said, at least in theory, state court judges are more in tune with the flavor of our state than federal court judges are, right? Federal court judges, for anyone who doesn't know, federal court judges are appointed by presidential administrations. Right. And so even here in Idaho federal court, those judges are appointed right now they're being appointed by the Biden administration. So you can imagine what is coming into our federal courts right now. So I believe that is a big advantage. As someone who litigates these cases, I do think that is a potential huge advantage to the people of Idaho, just to have more options if they have had free speech. And again, free exercise of religion as well. We're going for that just because we really believe, why not have another recourse in that arena? There's nothing bad that can come of that. And so,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, you are. And, you know, we've had you on a few times and maybe I didn't properly introduce you, but this is your area. This is First Amendment. This is what Pacific Justice Institute is all about. This is why we have you on to discuss this kind of thing, is because this is your area of expertise here. And so, okay, so I'm looking at the bill. And there's when you read through a bill, a lot of times they'll put in what the legislative intent is. And this, what it states here is that current law does not provide a mechanism to enforce these rights against government entities. And so this is essentially the intent of the law, is that we're recognizing that there is no mechanism for Idahoans to sue the state when their speech is violated. So, do you have any examples of something that happened in Idaho that could have fallen under this that no one was able to take care of?
Definitely. I have a number of free speech cases myself here that, again, have been filed in federal court because they had to be.
Right.
And do I know of any cases where someone couldn't find any way to recover that? I can't say, one way or another, but what I can say myself is that I have a number of free speech cases in our state, and they're all in federal court because that's the only option. And
if this law was already in effect, you think, for instance, I think there's that case out in Kellogg in Shoshone County up here in the north with Travis, who spoke out at his school, said men are men, women are women, there's no in between, and then got punished for that. That's a specific case that could have been brought against the state rather than it being stuck in federal court.
Absolutely. So that could have been brought in state court, or at a minimum, a state law claim could have been tagged on to the federal claim. So it's just more options, more ways to recover damages for people that have been aggrieved. Again, Travis Lore is a great example, and a number of other cases like that. And, it just is good to have options. Again, I think a lot of attorneys don't have any interest in being in federal court, dealing with federal court. I'm there all the time, so I guess I'm used to it, but I understand. I mean, you can only do so much, right? And so the pool of people to help them, I think, is going to be smaller simply because you have to utilize federal court. So yeah, to answer your question, that was a long answer. I'm sorry, but yes, I have numerous cases that this would have applied to. Yes.
Okay. Great. Because, we hear a lot of times when bills get before people that some detractors will say, well, this is trying to solve a problem that isn't occurring. And it's like, no, this one is definitely occurring. and just today, or last night, I tweeted out, because we were speaking about the mask mandate bill, prohibition bill that's going through the system right now. And there was a big hearing on it yesterday. And I had a couple folks in my reply to me on a post on X saying that that there should be a way for us to sue these people who put these mandates on us or who restrict us in a certain way. And I told him, I said, you got to tune in tomorrow, because this is the beginning of something. It may not cover everything yet, but this is the beginning of something. So let's deal with the First Amendment first and see if we can get this through. I do want to point out to you the exceptions, right? Because you're going to find, the purists that will read the law and go, oh, what are these exceptions for? Now you're just putting into law a way for the government to restrict our rights. And so I want to point you out to page 2, lines, I believe on line 17 here. It says any government entity or employee may substantially burden a person's exercise. And then it goes on to say, as long as the government is it's essential to further a compelling governmental interest, and is also using the least restrictive means of furthering that compelling governmental interest. So I wanted to address this, because I know there's going to be these purists out there that are saying, what do you mean? Like there should never be a reason why the government would restrict your First Amendment rights? Why are we giving someone an out? Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this language is consistent with federal law and also our state's free exercise of religion statute that's separate from this. And really what this means is that the government can step in if someone claims that something they're doing is part of their religion, right? But it is very problematic. So the example I always use is if someone believes as part of their religion that they have to murder children, okay? The government in that situation can step in and say, okay, we as a state have a compelling interest in preventing the murder of children. And so yes, okay, you're saying that is a religious practice that you have a belief in, but we think that our interest in preventing the murder of children is it trumps that, right? And this is reserved for pretty extreme. I mean, that example is very extreme, but it is a difficult bar for the government to prove that it does have a compelling interest that overrides our free exercise of religion.
Okay, so, and we discussed this last time you were on the program, the compelling interest.
Yes, I get a lot of questions about this, and it's a great question. I mean, because to understand when the state truly can step in and say, okay, this is a little bit too far, right. And this is why. And again, it is a high barrier. It's a very high barrier for the government to show that they have a compelling interest and that they are doing that in a way that's narrowly tailored, which means it only is addressing the very specific thing there's a problem with. So you as a lawyer defending somebody or prosecuting the government for this, the burden would be on the government in that case to say, oh, no, we had a compelling interest. And you're going to be there saying like, no, you had no compelling interest to tell a high school student that he couldn't say what he said. Correct. Right.
Okay.
You got it. Exactly.
So, okay. All right, good. So that kind of stuff will be hashed out in court. So it wouldn't stop somebody from hiring an attorney or filing a claim in this sense. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, good. The other thing is who's ultimately responsible. It makes me think of the term, I'm just doing my job, right? And so when somebody violates someone's rights, and usually we see this in like police brutality cases or something like that, where someone says, well, I'm just doing my job. Okay, so who is ultimately going to be responsible in here? And I noticed that the liability entity here is the government, but is there anything that happens to the individual who's working for the government that is the one that violated the rights? What are the difference between the two in this law?
So if the individual who I guess was the decision maker or whoever initiated the violation, we'll just put it that way, and every case is a little bit different, but if there was a specific individual who was responsible, but they were acting within their official capacity as a government employee, okay, then that would the liability would fall onto the government. If that person was acting outside of their scope of employment, then that would change that scenario. So then that would, put the individual potentially at risk as well. But I mean, generally speaking, these people act within their job scope, right? And so then that would mean their government employer, whether it's local, state, whatever they are, it would fall to them.
Okay, so if the state of Idaho had like an Anthony Fauci type character who was, doing, violating people's rights by insisting that the city has to do this and the city has to do that and violate your rights in a certain manner, is there any recourse in this law against that person? Like, do we then get to tell the government you have to fire that person or you have to send them to jail or whatever? I mean,
no.
No. Okay.
No.
So what's the recourse against an individual? And this might be out of the scope of what we can do here. I mean, it's like, public flogging or tar and feathering. I'm not advocating that per se, but that's kind of the feeling that people get. Like, why do these people get to just walk away and then the taxpayer, quote unquote, is on the hook for all of this? How do we deter this stuff from the actual people who are the ones violating in the name of government?
That's a great question. I hope something like this is a deterrent. To your point, that's obviously an internal decision by the government. Do we fire this person? Do we discipline this person? There's not always a lot we can do about that, to be honest. I think my experience is that a lot of this stuff happens and no one wants to challenge it. And so they kind of, the aggrieved individual may just say, okay, this is wrong, but I want to keep my job and I want to keep going and I don't want to rock the boat. And that is why I think it continues. And I've seen that a lot. And so I think those people who are willing to stand up and say, no, this is wrong and someone needs to be held accountable at least in some way, that is what I think really helps change things. And my impression is that I think government entities get so much pressure from the left, to do this or to do that, or we're going to sue, we're going to do this. And I think if there was more of that coming from the other perspective, it may even things out better. And I do think that is somewhat of a deterrent. Yeah. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
no, it does. And I realize I'm putting the cart before the horse here and trying to go right after these individuals. But this is the reason I think this is just so important, and I think most people out there should follow this bill and support it, is because it has long-term ramifications of deterrence. And this mechanism that says, you know what, we are not going to allow our government agencies to keep violating us without having some sort of recourse. So I think that this is a fantastic first step, especially when it comes to taking on the First Amendment and protecting that. A couple, just maybe two last questions here, real quick ones. Any other states across the union have this, or are we lagging behind? Are we the first out of the gate? Where does it stand across the country?
It all looks pretty differently. Yes, some states do have an ability for a cause of action under their state constitution, definitely. And that looks honestly differently in various states. So I would say, this is not out of complete left field by any means for us to have something like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Good. That's always good when they're trying to defend this in committees and stuff. Okay. This had a print hearing a couple of weeks ago, I think, a week ago or so, and it actually didn't have an actual hearing. They just blanket said, oh, let's just print this and we'll have a hearing later on. So we know it's coming back. Senator Ben Taves, his name is on this. Representative Bruce Skog, his name is on this as well. And he's the chairman of the committee that this would be before. So we expect, and I heard that we should expect to see this bill have a hearing on Monday. So if that's the case, then we will definitely check out that hearing on Monday and see what kind of hubbub this goes. We'd be surprised. Maybe it'll just sail through, or maybe we'll get some pushback. Do you expect there to be any pushback? I mean, what ideologically speaking, is this something? I mean, this feels like something that all ideologues could get behind.
You would think so. I mean, I would think that the area of pushback may come from people saying, okay, at least to the free exercise of religion portion, okay, we already have a state statute. We don't really need this. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that. And I guess if that pushback was severe, we could remove that. It's possible to remove that part and maybe just go with the free speech route just to get something down there. Again, there may be no pushback with that. I have no idea, but that would be unsurprising to me if there's pushback related to that. It seems like there's always pushback related to adding causes of action,
right.
As I'm sure that So there certainly could be that going on. And definitely if they argue that this is not happening in Idaho, I'd be happy to correct them on that. But hopefully they're aware that there are problems in Idaho with this that need to be addressed. But we'll see. I'm very interested to see what the reaction is myself.
Yeah, we all are. Well, so far we got good reactions on this side. So I thank you for coming on and explaining some of this. I think I got all my questions out about this on here. But I'm certain we'll hear some rumblings if people still have an issue with this. But I don't see any problem with it right now, and you've explained some of the problems away for me, if there are any. So, Kate, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? Where can people follow your work or get a hold of you if they need, if they have some free speech issues and religious persecution issues?
Yeah, our website is pji.org. And if you need legal help, you can certainly request legal assistance at that website. And if you're in Idaho, they will get a hold of me.
Fantastic. All right, folks. Thank you so much, Kate, for joining us. And we'll have you back, and we'll check in on all the other things we've been talking about too. But it's good to see you.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you having me.
Okay. All right, folks. That's House Bill 517. House Bill 517. So pay attention to that. I think we're going to hear it in committee on Monday, and if we do, we will make sure to follow that and bring that to you. Very important stuff. This is what we're talking about when we talk about, not getting caught up in all the noise. These are the things that are vital. These are the things that are vital. They're creating a foundation to fight all these other little battles and to really push back on the establishment. So House Bill 517 is crucial, and this might set the precedent for other areas that we can have mechanisms for redress against our government, not just yelling into the ether or showing up at meetings and being like, "What can we do?" Well, now you can do something, and we thank people like Kate Hartley who work for an organization that fights on behalf of the First Amendment in this particular case. And so this is very important. We could sit here all day and talk about genders and pronouns and cannibalism and whatever, but we're not going to do that. We are going to focus on what we feel are the most important bills, and you're going to see pushback on this stuff, especially with the budget. When we spent 2 weeks talking about the budget process, and people were like, "Oh, this is kind of boring, or it's not very important." It was so important they got rid of their majority leader. Okay, this stuff's important. We've got our fingers on the pulse. I'm watching your comments. I've got people texting me and sending me emails. We are steering the ship forward. There will be no distractions. No distractions. We are moving forward. We are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to check in with some more folks, find out what's happening on the floor, and just more to come. More to come. We'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Okay, we are back, and this morning in the House State Affairs Committee, Representative Dale Hawkins presented a resolution regarding immigration. We don't really talk about national stories on this program, but the immigration story is extremely important to Idaho, even though we're not on the southern border. We got a northern border with Canada, but the things that's going on down at the southern border do affect Idaho. So Representative Dale Hawkins was in committee this morning with a resolution. Let's listen to a bit of his presentation.
Joint memorial. This is our way of messaging to our congressional leaders and the rest of the state some opinions that Idaho may have. And I will just read from the SOP. The federal government controls immigration, naturalization, and entry into the United States. President Biden's administration has failed to meet its responsibility to enforce our immigration laws and secure our nation's borders. This memorial expresses the desire of Idaho citizens to hold President Biden and the federal government accountable for the invasion at our southern border. Enforcing immigration laws, securing our border, and reducing the flow of illegal drugs and sex trafficking must be at the forefront of any policy discussion before the needs of labor should come absolute secondary. The numbers just came out. There were 570 deaths in Idaho related to fentanyl overdose. We know that human trafficking and the sex trade is exploding, and these all relate to the problem at the southern border. Over the past 2 years, the population of Idaho has crossed, the equivalent number, has crossed that border 4 times, possibly 5. We know of about 8 million people and about 2 million unaccounted for. It is totally wide open. This is an invasion, and the current administration is doing nothing but seems to be encouraging it, and that's what this deals with.
Thank you, Representative Hawkins. Representative Gannon, you have a question for Representative Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Representative Hawkins, welcome. I do have to ask you a couple of questions, though. Isn't it true that Congress has not acted either to close some of the immigration loopholes that are in present law?
Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Gannon. I know that there's accusation in the media, but it is the sole duty of the president. I know that 2 years ago, when the current administration took control, they undid everything that was being done. We had the lowest numbers coming across the border in I think in the past history, and now we have an explosion, and all those actions were taken by executive order from the office of the president.
That is absolutely correct. We wanted to make sure we had Representative Gannon's question in there. These Democrats, they love to circle around each other and defend Joe Biden. But Representative Hawkins had a fantastic answer there. It is my pleasure right now to bring on Representative Hawkins, who left the floor already. And we're so grateful for you coming onto the program, Representative. That was this morning, your presentation this morning in House State Affairs. I wanted to bring you on to discuss this a little bit further, because this is a vital issue, even for a state that doesn't share a border with Mexico. How are you, sir? What can you tell us more?
Well, thanks, Matt, for having me on. And it is critical for Idaho. There is a lot of things that we didn't get into this morning. Obviously, it was just the RS so that I could get it passed and then get a formal hearing. But Idaho is burdened dramatically, as I said in the hearing. Right now, it actually is in excess of 570 deaths attributed to fentanyl in our state, which we perceive as coming over the southern border of the United States. And then because these people are entering every state, these drugs are coming with them. The sex trafficking of children is coming with them. And there are other things that we didn't even talk about this morning. The fact that our entire medical situation is burdened by these people coming in here illegally, because medical providers are forced to treat anyone who comes, whether they're U.S. citizens or not. Our schools are overburdened. So this is not just the human destruction that's going on, but economically, this is a huge problem for Idaho.
Yes, and those are great points that you brought up there, and it is amazing to me that when you think about a question that Representative Gannon, that he said, well, you know, he immediately said to, like, well, who should we blame fault on? Who should we put this fault on? And you pointed out clearly that we didn't have this problem, or the problem was being reduced just a few years ago until all of these executive orders come in. That being said, a resolution like this, how does that help you move forward with anything else that you might want to do in terms of legislation?
So first of all, Matt, what it is a joint memorial. So it's a little different. A resolution is something that goes out and I think just stays in the state. What this joint memorial do, if we can get it all the way through the House side and get it to the Senate side, the contents of this joint memorial, which is a bit broad. I mean, it calls for some pretty serious things in there, including the demand for the impeachment of the president for failure to do his duty. But once this goes all the way through, then the clerk assigns this, and this gets sent to our delegation in Congress, to our congressional leaders as well, putting this demand in their hand, that Idaho has sent this demand to them. I got a call just the other day after the Senate's vote on this, exorbitant amount of money they want to send to Ukraine, but they want to tie it to other things. And people were asking me, what can we do? Well, I said, well, the best thing we can do on the national stage is this, because this sends a message to our congressional leaders what the will of the state would be, and for them to carry out the will of the state, because Idaho people are suffering under this.
Okay, well, wow, that's great. Okay, so a little education for me. That's what I love about having you folks on this. This is a memorial. It's different than a resolution. A memorial actually goes to our federal delegation and says, hey, you guys got to do something about this. That is fantastic. I love hearing that. That is great. Okay, good. Okay. Another aspect of this, of course, is and we see this topic come up when we're talking about immigration and them trying to get through amnesty last year with another resolution or memorial or whatever they were trying to do that would allow, and driver's license for illegal aliens in Idaho, is the labor aspect of it, is our reliance on cheap labor. Does this address that as well?
It does. I mean, as I read in the SOP, which is spelled out clear in the memorial itself, is that these other things, holding the federal government accountable, including the impeachment of the current president, and correcting these issues and correcting the problem at the border, must be dealt with before we can ever talk about Idaho's need for undocumented workers. Remember, we're not talking about the people who come here from the H-2A program or those who are documented and have legal work visas. We're talking about people by the droves that are entering the country, and they're looking for work everywhere. They're given this paperwork when they come across and turn themselves in. I mean, they are filling out some documents, but I saw a gentleman that works the border all the time, and he has sacks full of IDs. So they're dumping who they really are, and we don't know who they are when they sign this other stuff. And I don't know that they have permission to work while they're waiting for their trial or whatever their hearing phase is, that from what we hear, most of them don't even show up. They just kind of disappear into the country.
Yes. Well, you're leading the work, the fight on this memorial. I think this is a fantastic route to take in trying to address this issue, because it is affecting. I mean, from the fentanyl issue, like you said, the medical field, the schools are being overrun with and burdened by this. Okay, your next step, you're going to get a full hearing. What are the chances here? Do you see any major pushback other than John Gannon, perhaps?
well, I will have. He asked the question about the COVID stuff, and I didn't know how to relate to that as far as this was concerned. But I'll find out. I'll give him those answers and what other things I can anticipate. I think it'll make it through the House just fine. When we cross the rotunda there, I'm not so sure. We're going to see if we can't lay some groundwork and see what we can do there. This is not mine solely. This is also Senator Zeiderfeld's bill as well, memorial. And so this is a teamwork of the two of us. As a matter of fact, I thought she'd show up and we'd kind of crash her show with both of us, but she must be held up in committee. So, but this is a joint effort, and it's going to take a lot of people to get it lifted over the finish line. It does not need to be signed by the governor. So once it's made it through both houses, if we're so blessed to have it get that far, then all the direction for it to be sent to our congressional representatives will take place.
Okay, very good. So that's where we need to rally, folks. We need folks to make sure you're contacting your senators and make sure that they are supporting this memorial. And more importantly, because there's a lot of folks that also pay attention to our congressional. You've got Mike Simpson, Reich, Crapo, Fulcher. Those are the four gentlemen that represent us in Congress. And so that is who this memorial is designed to be sent to those four gentlemen in order to do something about this border issue. Fantastic. All right, Dale, where can people follow you and how can we stay in touch?
Well, Dale Hawkins on Twitter, and then of course dhawkins@house.idaho.gov is my legislative email. And if you go on the legislative site, my cell phone's there, everything else, so people can call or email or whatever they want to do. I'm as available as you are.
Fantastic. Okay. Representative Dale Hawkins, proud member of the Freedom Caucus as well. Thank you for joining us, and we'll have you back and we'll make sure to keep eyes on this.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt.
All right. Take care. All right, folks. Fantastic. Yeah. Get your phones, get your emails out there and make sure we support this memorial. This is very important. I'm glad I got to learn about this. Excuse me. Memorials are better than resolutions, and this will force our delegation to at least listen to us out here and to their state representatives and senators back home. Okay, folks, we're going to take a quick break. We've got some more things to cover, and we'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
There's a saying in Idaho: Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, we are back. The reason why Senator Ziderville didn't join Representative Hawkins is because she's still on the floor in the Senate. The fentanyl bill, House Bill 406, is currently being debated. So they made it this far. It is now 12:22 in the South in Boise, and they are into the lunch hour on the fentanyl bill. This looks like it's Senator Melissa Wintrow, Democrat out of Boise, debating on this bill. So let's dip in for a little bit and listen to what parts of this bill they are discussing.
And the judge said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but there is this mandatory thing and I can't do anything about it. Now you're going to sit in jail, prison for 7 years." I mean, it was heartbreaking. I was in tears by the time I left the prison. And I asked the counselors at the time, I said, what number of women incarcerated today in this facility were first victims of sexual and domestic violence? And they rolled their eyes. They said 95% or more. And so it dawned on me, what do people do when they're in trauma and they've been harmed? They medicate. Maybe through alcohol, maybe through tobacco, drugs, bad relationships. And so here, what's happening again is a lot of women are getting entrapped and getting basically victimized again. It was such a telling visit I had in the prison that day. And it dawned on me then, like, why we have a system of checks and balances. We have a court system, we have an executive branch, and we have a legislative branch. Let the judicial branch weigh in and look at all the facts of the case and make a decision about how long somebody is going to be in prison. That seems fair. That seems fair. And in those cases then too, the judge can make the determination based on all the facts of the attorneys and the case and making the proof of the case, and they can make some decisions using the compassion that the senator from 6 discussed and make a better decision for that person. These kind of laws are not getting the kingpins. they're unintentionally getting the folks that are maybe addicts or shuffling. And that's who gets in trouble, is the people that aren't as good as crime. The kingpins are getting off. And I mentioned the story about women because Idaho's rate of incarcerating women is the highest in the country. We have to build more prisons. 60% of the women incarcerated in Idaho are there because of a drug crime as their longest, most serious offense. I think that's tragic. I am asking you today to think about those things, demonstrate some of that compassion, and allow for a balanced and fair approach to folks who may be addicted to a drug and cannot see.
Okay, we have been watching and listening to Senator Wintrow, Democrat out of District 19 in Boise, voice in negative debate against House Bill 406, which is the mandatory minimums for fentanyl. Interesting, all this all this discussion. We just had Representative Dale Hawkins on there trying to address this issue through a memorial that would help our congressional folks in D.C. deal with shutting off the borders, that we wouldn't even have to deal with these types of issues. But this is the nature of everything that's going on here, is when you have such a horrible drug like fentanyl, it puts people in very dire circumstances. Looks like Senator Chris Treacle is up here. Let's listen to him. He might have a different perspective here. This is one of Citizens Alliance's pledge signers in good standing, so we always want to make sure we hear from them. Let's listen to Senator Treacle.
We hear about the mandatory minimums. They don't work. There's no evidence. There's no proof. Proof shows that there's no use or work. I say, you want to see the proof? Look outside your window. That's the effect of mandatory minimums. We are not San Francisco. We are not Portland, Oregon. We are not Rhode Island. We are not PA, where you go out there and there's hypodermic needles laying all over the ground, all over the benches, drug addicts lining the streets like zombies that we're seeing in all these different states that have, granted, decriminalized, but that's just one step away from, one step further than mandatory minimums. So we're seeing the effects now. The reason why there's no studies that show them having effects is because we're seeing it, and there's no way to quantify that as to a better effect. So it's ridiculous. I mean, to make that argument in another type of crime, petty theft, let's allow it. My family's hungry, so I can go steal some groceries as long as it's feeding, because I'm not the big guy committing the big bank robberies or something like that. It's ridiculous. Crime, injustice, well, justice should be blind. So it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, if you're an addict and you're connected, you're still breaking the law. It's still against the law. It needs to be off the street, and you remove it. If we remove the demand for it by having harsh punishment, it's just simple economics. They're not going to come here to sell it. We have evidence that the police have wiretaps and stuff like that of drug dealers, big drug dealers, not wanting to come to the state of Idaho because of mandatory minimums. Are we catching the kingpins with that? Probably not in fentanyl, because where are they? They're the cartels in Mexico. They're in China, the factories that are making this stuff. We're a state. We have state sovereignty over our borders and our jurisdiction. We can't go after the kingpins, but what we can do is go after the people here.
All right, we've been listening to Senator Treacle vote in the affirmative for this bill, and his opinions on mandatory minimums and all that. So this is obviously a very touchy subject, and mandatory minimums we've seen across the country have been very controversial over the years, and so this debate will continue. We're nearing the end of our program. Just a reminder to watch the House and floor. You can go over to the legislative website, but over at citizensallianceidaho.org, we made it pretty easy. You go to the Take Action page, and down at the bottom it says Watch Live. And so you click on that, you get the House and the Senate, and you can watch directly from there as well. So we're happy that we can have that embedded on our site as well. Anyway, thank you for joining us today. It is a way for you to help out the show is to head over to idahosignal.com. You can send us a donation. You can send us a message. You can get in touch with us there. We certainly do appreciate all of the support and everything that has been coming our way through that idahosignal.com. Also, your comments on Rumble, on X, on YouTube and Facebook and everything. We see those. We may not be able to reply to all of them, but we do see them, and we try our best to bring you the best every day. So thank you so much for joining us. We will see you tomorrow. Take care.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.